I'll just do a little bit of a review. We've had some challenging times, all of us have. What if this change is meant to be a new beginning for me? If so, I will take the time to process, to rest and recover. I had the story about the man who was, he and his wife had been together for 50 years, and he couldn't imagine going on without her. And when she passed on, he took the time to grieve, and he said, "Oh, don't think I didn't grieve. I grieved, just about grieved my heart out." But he said, after a few months, I decided, she wouldn't have wanted this. There's no way she would have wanted this for me. So he said, regardless of my age, I started going to the amusement park once a week with all those young people because I love riding the rides. He said, I just started giving myself that day, that one day a week, I gave myself a reprieve to be joyful. And he said, pretty soon that one day became another day of joy and peace and contentment. Till the next thing I knew, I began to see the gifts, all of the gifts that were there in store for me, and the gift that I had with sharing my life with her all those years. But then the bigger gift that came after her passing, and I was given the opportunity of going deeper and finding God within me. He said it was the gift of going deeper, where he actually found his true nature and the true essence of God that's right here. And there's so many times that we do have so much grief, and it takes time to process that from the loss. But there is always a gift that comes with it, always. So we take the time to process, rest, and recover. And we decide at some point, though, sooner or later, it doesn't matter when, the timing, it just doesn't matter. There's no right, there's no wrong. We decide we are not going to stare at a closed door forever. We're not going to pitch a tent in the desert. We may need to stay there a while, but we're not going to stay there forever. We're going to see the gift in knowing this beautiful life that came. And then we may start to see this was an angel indeed that came to earth to teach me. And then in his or her leaving, to teach me even more. And to find God right here, right now. As I become a better person, a deeper person, and add more light to the world. So I won't stare at a closed door forever. If I do, then my life ended too. And that's not what we're meant to do. We're meant to go on. So I will change my attitude. I'll choose joy, after all. And I believe it was Brene Brown that said this: it's not joy that makes us grateful, it's gratitude that makes us joyful. Sometimes we'll think the other way around. We'll think, well, joy came first and then I became grateful. But what if we could just be grateful now? Just be grateful. So rather than choosing the path of sorrows, and I'm going to talk about that the next time I speak, is that going into the Easter season and the Lent season, we don't want to go down the Via Dolorosa, although that's a beautiful song. How many of you have heard that song? Amy Grant, Sandy Patty? Oh, touching, gorgeous song. But that's the way of sorrows. That's the way of suffering. And we don't want to choose that, okay? We've suffered enough. So I decided this Lent season that we were going to choose differently, and we were going to choose the way of joy and the path of joy instead of the way of suffering. Although if you do get a moment and you want to hear a beautiful piece of music, you might listen to the Via Dolorosa. It's beautiful. But it is the way of suffering. And it was the lyrics were written, of course, for the pathway that Jesus took as he carried the cross through Jerusalem. So we're going to follow the path of joy because we know that's what he would have chosen for us today, is to choose the path of joy. So my husband and I were at a discount store the other day in Long Beach, and you would know it if I gave you the name, but I'm not. It's a place that can become quite disorganized pretty quickly, although they probably go in every evening and sort through the aisles in no time at all. Everything's just strewn about, but you can actually find a bargain in there sometimes. You can also find things that are marked up like 4 times, and you're like, you know what, I could have bought that over there for like half of that, but it can almost, some of those discount stores can almost be depressing because they do have stuff everywhere, and you can't find prices, and sometimes the people in there seem a little depressed too. But I actually found something. It wasn't what we were looking for, but I actually found something that I had wanted, and like for, I don't know, $2 a panel for these gorgeous curtains that exactly the color I had wanted and envisioned and hadn't found anywhere. That wasn't what I was looking for, but we go up to the counter, and the young man, and I'd say he was a teenager. I'd say he's still in high school. He was so cheerful, you couldn't believe it. I've never seen a cheerful clerk in there before. He was just so cheerful, introduced himself, how are you today, and how are things, and could I put this in a bag for you? And I said, no, I try not to use plastic bags. I've done everything I can for years to not use plastic bags. I take my own. He said, well, thank you, ma'am. My mother's been working toward that goal for years. And he was quite impressed with me, a woman my age that was actually that forward thinking. Can you imagine? It was really sweet, and he was so engaging, and I just loved talking to him. And then as we're walking away, the phone rings, he picks it up, and he says, hey, this is Terry. How can I help you? With enthusiasm and joy. And you could tell he meant it. This may not have been the job of his choice, but he took it. He was grateful for it, probably wasn't paying what he really deserved or wanted, but he was grateful. And in his gratitude was joy. And I want to say something this morning. I don't want to confuse my subject, but I want to talk about gratitude and then scarcity mindedness, if I could, for just a moment. And I won't stay on that. If you are scarcity minded or in a scarcity consciousness, and that's how you view your life most of the time, you're not going to be grateful. You're just not, because you're going to always be seeing things as not enough. You're going to get up in the morning and say, if you have a scarcity attitude, you're going to say, instead of getting up and saying, wow, like we've done on some of those overnight flights to Europe, I slept a full 15 minutes, thank God. Or, and you're thankful for that. If you know what I mean, those of you that have been on those overnight flights, you're like, wow, I closed my eyes and I think I actually slept for a few minutes. Or you might be a person that gets up grouchily every morning and you say, oh gosh, I didn't sleep well. I would encourage you to change that mindset and get up every morning regardless. And say, thank you, God, for another day. What a beautiful day this is. And if I'm really tired, I'm going to carve out a moment or two for a nap this afternoon. But for today, I'm going to be grateful. I'm going to be grateful for the bed that I slept in. I'm going to be grateful for every single thing in my life. And I'm not going to have a scarcity mentality. And I just feel like people that aren't grateful aren't going to be joyful. And that's just all there is to it. They're just not. We've all been on at different places. You know, you've heard about the bus driver in Chicago that he wanted to be an opera star, but that wasn't his. He couldn't get a gig, and he couldn't get anything that would support him. But he did get a job as a bus driver. So he started singing, and everybody loved his bus so much that they would let another bus go by just so they could ride with him. But then I do remember, so anyway, those were door-to-door salesmen at that time. But this one man had tried everything, couldn't get a job that would work for him. And he needed to support his family. So he took a job as a door-to-door salesman. And here's where you can find a gift in doing something. It may not be the job you want, but sometimes you have to take it, don't you? Because you need to have the money, so you take it. So he took the job even though he didn't want it, and he did his best to smile and go on. But he soon found out that when he would ring a doorbell, that 50% of them didn't work. And so he decided that what he needed to do was carve out a new niche and become a doorbell repair person. So when he came home and told his wife, she laughed at him. But pretty soon, that's what he was doing. And he was making enough money to support his family, and he was joyful about it. And then there's a story about another type salesperson. I told you about that joyful young man that we ran into Then there's the story of another salesperson, and there's a woman in line, and she doesn't hear whatever the salesperson said to her, so she says, "I'm sorry, what did you say?" She says in a really mean, crude voice, "Well, I said have a good day, but apparently you can't hear." Okay, then. So many ways we can go about our lives looking for the gift, like on a Delta airplane. I heard about a pilot that if it was really windy and he made a really rough landing, he would just come on the intercom and make some joke about it and say, "Whoa, big fella, you're about to get away from us," or something like that. And the flight attendants on that flight would be joyful and make everyone laugh too. They would just come on and say, "Okay, make sure you take all your possessions. If you don't, we're just going to divvy them up between those of us that are left. And please, please, don't leave your spouse or children." But there are so many ways that we can lighten up our load no matter what. We can go to an amusement park. We can smile. Did you know just the act of smiling releases endorphins into your system? So if you're at a time where it's been really, really hard to smile, make yourself do that. If you feel like you're extremely grim, make yourself laugh. Was it the TV director? His name was Cousins, and he got a pretty bad diagnosis. And what he did was he just laid in bed and watched comedies all day long for several weeks. And do you know he healed himself by laughing? Those endorphins are important. Don't forget to laugh. It's important. I know sometimes you can't. Your pain is so bad, so deep. But we must find the gift in whatever it is that's coming our way. And I have another touching story before I finish. I told it several years ago, and I just came across it the other day. I was remembering something else, and I remembered this story, Welcome to Holland. There was a book titled Welcome to Holland. It was written in 1987 by American author and activist Emily Pearl Kingsley. I suspect it's perfect for most parents and really all of us. It says in part, when you're going to have a baby, it's like planning a fabulous vacation to Italy. You buy a bunch of guidebooks, make wonderful plans. The Colosseum, the Vatican, going to Venice, riding a gondola, going to do all those fabulous things. You may learn some handy phrases in Italian. It's all very exciting, so exciting. And after months of eager anticipation, the day finally arrives. Now remember, in the olden times, when women my age were pregnant, we didn't know the gender of the child. We didn't know if it would be twins. Sometimes they did because they could hear 2 heartbeats. We didn't know if the baby would be okay. We didn't know. We had no idea. We waited 9 months to find out. That's not the case anymore. So Miss Emily goes on to say, You pack your bags, off you go. Several hours later, the plane lands. The flight attendant comes on and says, "Welcome to Holland." Holland? You're confused. That's not where you were going. You were going to Italy. You were going to see the Sistine Chapel, the Colosseum. You weren't going to Holland. There's been a mistake, some confusion. There's something wrong here. This is somebody else's story, not mine. Right? She says, "I signed up for Italy. All my life I've dreamed of going to Italy. I'm supposed to be in Italy today. But there's been a change in the flight plan. You weren't even asked. You've landed in Holland." What the author is referring to, of course, is that when her baby was born, he had Down syndrome. Not at all what she expected, she nor her husband, the family, the grandparents. As it turned out, he had a wonderful life, just different than originally expected. He was greatly loved by his parents, grandparents, aunts, and uncles, and everyone who knew him. And it turned out that they were extremely grateful, after all, to have landed in Holland. They just didn't know it. They didn't want to go to Italy after all. This was their heart's desire. Friends, that's how you find joy after all. You find the gift. There's a gift in all things. The grief, the loss, the challenge, whatever it is that you're going through. There's a gift. And sometimes we'll think, you know, this challenge is bothersome to me, this job, I think I'll quit. As Doug said, thank you. We were reading each other's minds this morning. We were on the same vibe this morning. This job, this place, this whatever it is. But here's the thing. Until you learn, until you get whatever it is that person, especially if they're challenging, difficult to deal with, whatever the issue is, until you learn to speak back, to respond without reacting, to be balanced in your response. Guess what? You're going to leave that place without getting the gift. And you're going to go to the next place, and the same things are going to occur. It's just going to be somebody else's face. You're going to fly from New York to San Francisco, and somebody just like the one you just left is going to meet you at the plane. Guaranteed. It's the truth. It's the way life works. And I can guarantee that. If you've been given certain issues to deal with, and you think, or it's the other person, think again. You've got something to learn from this, even if it's to say, no, I don't like you speaking to me this way. No. Sometimes we just need to stand up and speak for ourselves. And sometimes we're the one that's overspoken. There's a gift in every single thing, every loss, every challenge, everything in life. And I hope you'll get it. I hope for all of us that we'll have a trip to Holland. And on our way, we'll be grateful. And when we arrive and get off the airplane, there will be so much joy that'll fill our hearts. And we will fill the entire planet with light and love.